Hello and welcome to AgWorks at CCA. My name is Samantha Johnson. First and foremost, I do want to thank everyone for attending here today. My job as the aquaponic lead here at CCA is to keep everything alive, but also to design programming for our students and also the community. So I do want to welcome you to our facility virtually. I will do a shameless plug to say that if you are in the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania area and you are interested in coming in and checking us out, all you have to do is Google AgWorks at CCA. You can learn more information about us, but most importantly, if you are interested in learning more, please feel free to email us. The email is agworks@ccaeducate.me. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started on companion planting. Now, some of you may be wondering, hey, what's going on behind me here? And how does that relate to the Caring Place? How does that relate to National Grief Awareness Day? All great questions, and we will get to each one of those pieces. But I do want to first introduce you to the facility in which I'm standing, which I already mentioned. We are in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. We are the largest aquaponic educationally based facility in the country. So we are pretty big. You can see behind me here, we have quite a lot of plants growing. The big guy here is a banana, but we also have some succulents in these giant spheres. We do have an avocado right here. We have a cacao or a cocoa going on here. But some of you, clever eyes, may have noticed, okay, well, behind this cocoa, it looks like you got some fish. Now, AgWorks, we do aquaponics, hydroponics, and aeroponics. The main source of growth is what's called aquaponics, where we use some sort of aquatic life, hence aquaponics. These guys, something that's aquatic, is the driver, is the fuel for the rest of the system. So the best way to kind of encapsulate what aquaponics is to everybody that's attending here today, just very high level, there's a lot of science behind it, but we don't need to get into that for our companion planting today. But essentially you use fish. These guys, if you have a guess, I'll kind of pause. I know that you can comment on Facebook Live, but if you have a guess as to what kind of fish this is, please feel free to comment. They are kind of big. But we actually use tilapia, which is a invasive species here in Pennsylvania. It's a great learning tool for kids, very resilient fish, hence why it's an invasive species. It can outperform all of the local salmon, trout, other kind of species that are local to Pennsylvania. But what happens in aquaponics is these guys, they eat a lot of food, they produce a lot of waste. Now, that waste product is very nutritionally dense. So it's actually used by our plants to help them grow. So the water starts in the tank, fish are swimming around, doing their thing, using the bathroom. That water then circulates to this clarifier, which is the cylinder that's kind of still hidden a little bit behind the cocoa, but this guy right here is a clarifier. We actually empty that out, all of the nutrients, all of that waste, into our plant beds. And as the water hits the roots of all of these plants, it helps them grow. And what's great about this type of setup is that everything gets to feed off of one another. It's an actual living ecosystem. So as all of the nutrients, as that waste product hits some of these beds, it helps all of those plants to grow. And then as they grow, they actually remove those nutrients, remove that waste product from the water. That way, when it cycles back to this tank, it's nice and clean, and it can start that process all over again. Now, that is an example, for those of you that love science, that is an example of a symbiotic relationship, how one living thing can lean on another. They work in cohesion, they work together very well. And that's actually what we're gonna cover here today, are how different types of plants also work together very well. Now, we do experience some good things and some bad here in the lab. If you are a CCA student, representing with my shirt, if you are a CCA student, more than likely you've experienced the cycle of life with our tilapia. They need to live their best life in aquaponics. So everything that we do in the lab is to make sure that they stay healthy. But some of these guys are pretty big. They're actually entering their 6th or 7th year of life, because some of them we got from other operators before we opened in 2018. And as they get a little bit old, we can harvest them, meaning we can, have them alive on ice and donate them to the food bank. We could donate them to local restaurants. But more or less, we try to keep them as long as we can. So some of them do pass away due to old age. It takes about 7 years or so for the lifespan of a tilapia to reach its end. So there are times where there are some sadness that happens in the lab when some of them do start to get a little bit sick or a little bit old and pass away. And one of the things that we try to teach our students is there are different pieces to the cycle of life, but what you feel when things pass away or when bad things happen, all of that is of course valid. Just because it's the cycle of life doesn't make it any better. So we do our best to have avenues for them to kind of learn from those feelings, how to cope with some of those feelings, how to lean on one another, either virtually, because we do a lot of virtual programming like this, or if you're lucky enough, you live in the Harrisburg area and you're able to come in relatively regularly and get to know people that also come in regularly, it's a good support system to have. Now, some of you at home may have a garden. You may also have, potted plants that you keep at home. What we have found is that a lot of students get a lot of comfort by working with their hands, working with living things, and they tend to have a lot of fun doing that. So we try to give them some tips and tricks on how to keep things alive. Now cocoa, probably nobody that's attending this has a cocoa just growing in their garden. I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, please holler at me and let me know, because I'd love to chat about how you keep that alive here in the Pennsylvania area. Same thing kind of goes with an avocado. They're really not native to Pennsylvania. Bananas, not so much either. Those are all great learning tools for kids, don't get me wrong. But we also have a lot of native species to Pennsylvania, but also a lot of things that grow very well here in the Commonwealth and can be used in what's called companion planting. So I do apologize, I am moving around a little bit here, but don't worry, I am sedentary at this point. But I am curious, for those of you that are attending, is anyone here familiar with companion planting? I'll kind of pause for effect. Anybody know what companion planting is? Ever heard of plants that work well together? Because spoiler alert, that is what companion planting is. Companion planting is when you have one plant that you plant beside another plant. I'm going to try and say plant as much as I can, apparently. But two plants planted together, and they actually have a symbiotic relationship, meaning that both of them serve a purpose to help the other one out. So when students come into the lab, sometimes they're coming from a home life or a home experience where they're frustrated, maybe they're really mad in the morning. And I always tell them, again, feelings are valid. You still need to get your work done. You don't want to bring other people down that are around you. But in the same breath, we're also your support system. So we are here to help you. If you're having a bad day, let's talk about it. What's making it bad? Why are you feeling that way? Is it just a feeling you kind of woke up with in the morning? Or did something happen this morning, yesterday, last week, last month, last year, or even years ago that just sometimes kind of creeps up on you and gives you that kind of negative feeling? We want them to be able to express that, and we want them to be able to lean on each other. Because just like humans leading on other humans, that does happen in the plant world. Hence the one plant planted next to the other plant, helping them both out. Now, let me give you an example of that. And here I'm going to scoot to the side a little bit so you can see behind me. But here we actually have a companion planting garden where we have sage and lavender, which are planted right here. Now, we are going to share in this live stream a document with you that kind of goes through the benefits of some plants. We have some lemongrass over there, which also can be planted as a companion plant. Mint is an example of one as well. But what essentially you do, if you have a garden, even if you have, an indoor grow area of some kind, maybe you live on a farm. that's an operational farm and you're trying to promote overall plant health, there are some things that can impact your plants. Sometimes you'll look at them and go, ooh, they kind of look a little bit brown, like my poor banana back behind me here. That's actually caused because bananas, as they shed their leaves, they slowly kind of shed off and die before they flower. So luckily that's not a bad browning of that particular plant. But sometimes plants, they turn brown or they start wilting. They may look a little bit flimsy or not as rigid as they should as they grow. And so that may indicate that there's some sort of problem, some sort of issue. Most of the time, at least in our experience, it's caused by bugs. We have good bugs that we have in here, but we also have bad ones. And the great thing about companion plants is some of them actually keep those bad bugs away. So if you have something like aphids or mealybugs that are infesting your plants at home, your garden, even your farm, one way that you can combat that is by introducing a companion plant, something that can grow alongside the crop that you would like to grow, but that keeps the bad bugs away. Again, sage and lavender are two great examples of that. Both of them are pretty pungent smelling. Some of you may have heard of, burning sage. Some of you have eaten sage, sage, rosemary, and thyme. If any of you are big meat eaters out there, that's a general seasoning combo that's delicious. But also with lavender, lavender is also in tea. It tastes really good. So humans tend to like both sage and lavender just in general, but you can plant them alongside other plants to help promote their overall growth. Now, lavender is really interesting. I actually love lavender because I think it's really pretty. So let me kind of show you here. I'm not sure if I can completely zoom in, but right here you can kind of see we have our purple flower right here. This purple flower is great because what it does is it can attract bees. Now we're inside, so we're not attracting bees necessarily in here, but it is a great companion plant if you have something that's planted outside because you want to attract pollinators. Pollinators, like bees, are really great to have in your garden or on your farm because pollination is the key to things like fruiting crops. So this guy, lavender, is a great example of something that if you're having some issues and you want to attract some bees to your garden and you want to have a more fruitful harvest, if you will, this is a great plant to include. And again, you can dry it out. You can use lavender as a cooking spice if you would like. You can also put it in your tea. Sage, which is kind of this green plant behind me here. I love sage. Sometimes I honestly walk around here and I just rub the plant and I like to smell it because I really like the smell of sage. It's very calming. But sage is one of those items that also helps to repel bad bugs. So if you have insect infestations of some kind, those yucky bugs that you just really don't want in your system, this is a really good plant to include. Now, some of you may be wondering, hey, I have a garden at home, and maybe you have specific types of plants, and you are looking for a companion that you can plant alongside it. Well, great, because included in this presentation is a companion planting guide. That way, if you're looking for those specifics, let's say that you're trying to grow corn, you're trying to grow tomatoes, it actually lists out different examples of companion plants that you can put alongside it. I mentioned mint earlier. Some of you may have cringed slightly at my mentioning of mint. Mint is invasive to Pennsylvania. If you leave it alone, it just grows and grows and grows, and it can take over your whole garden if you're not careful. But mint is another one of those very pungent plants that can also serve as a way to keep those bad bugs away. Throughout AgWorks, we actually use companion planting because we do have some bad bugs in our system. Now, my students tend to laugh at me, and I'm gonna sneak over here really quick to grab them. But we do have different types of bugs in our particular system. And the reason they laugh at me is I got these huge blown up examples of the bugs that we have, and they just think that's really cute and funny. But we have whitefly in our system. They are attracted to some of our tomatoes. We have mint that are planted alongside our giant wall of tomatoes here at AgWorks. just again as that repellent for them. We have spider mites. Spider mites, not the best. They're another example of one of the bad bugs. We also have aphids in here, another type of bad bug. Even though we're inside, they'll walk in with people. They'll just crawl under the doors and stuff and make their way into AgWorks. And we want to find a really holistic way that we can remove them. Because again, we don't want to do anything toxic. We don't want to try to release something in here that's bad for our ecosystem. We don't want to use pesticides, for example, in our particular system. What we are looking to do is try to have plants like these that we can take cuttings of, and then we can supplement the rest of our system with these good plants. Same thing with things like basil. Basil can also be used as a companion plant, but you can also plant other ones beside it as well. I mentioned that it helps to keep bad bugs away. It can attract pollinators as well, but there's also different ways that they can play off of one another to help the overall flavor of your food. I don't know if any of you have heard of the Three Sisters Garden as well. That's corn, squash, and beans. That's a great example of a companion planting system where the corn grows nice and tall. Your beans will wrap around the corn, which offers it stability and support. And then you have your squash that grows along the basin, and that squash protects all of the roots from bugs, from other predators like deer. So a Three Sisters garden, there are even more examples of how those three plants play off one another, but that's another really great example of companion planting. Now, I had mentioned to you guys in the beginning that we have students from all walks of life that come in to our system, and sometimes they're having good days, sometimes they're having bad. And we really want this to be a safe space for them. So we always try to draw parallels between what it is they're feeling on a certain day and how that exists in nature. And companion planting is one of the best possible examples of that. But I will show you another example of what we're doing here at AgWorks, again, just to try to get some of those feelings out. We have what's staged right now is called the Happy Plant Experiment, Happy and Sad, where we're actually growing mint, one of our companion plants. And we have one area that we're just getting started with, if I show you guys here. But our students said, hey, what makes us sad? We're gonna have this area, this is our seed tray that we're gonna put our mint on. And then we had some fans of certain types of movies, as you can see. But we're gonna have students come in, and when they're having a particularly bad day, or something's going wrong, maybe they don't wanna verbalize it to us. That's totally fine. Sometimes gardening can be a solitary activity. Again, totally fine, very soothing way to spend your time, spend your day as a hobby. But what we're gonna do is have them come in. They can take a 3x5 note card of some kind, write some grumpy words on it. We are a school, so they do need to be school appropriate. And then we're gonna put them up here as a part of our experiment. What happens when you surround seedlings with happy thoughts versus sad and grumpy thoughts? Also surrounding it will be some photos that our students are taking. They're gonna be doing some drawings. They're gonna come in. They're gonna say some happy or sad things to our plants, which should be pretty funny. But it also serves that purpose of, if you're having a bad day, everybody has them. Come in, get your grumpy thoughts out, get your grumpy feelings out. That way, when you are working with other students, you feel a little bit more secure, a little bit happier, because you've had a chance to express those thoughts and feelings. And we specifically set this area up right next to where we are doing our companion planting here, because the tie-in, I know I'm repeating myself a bit here, but that tie-in of how does sage, how does lavender, how can lemongrass, how can basil, how can mint help other plants to grow, thrive, and survive? Because we really, as humans, sometimes we feel like we're living a solitary lifestyle. Some people more than others, especially right now during the pandemic. And we want to be able to build that community, or at least let the community know that, hey, we're here as a support. People support other people. It's good to be able to talk about things. Sometimes that takes time. Sometimes you might start out just writing something on a board, drawing something, taking photos of something. Eventually you may work your way up to being able to express those thoughts and feelings. But always is better when you have a ladder, you have other people that you can rely on, that you can build on, that help you kind of climb out of some of those just negative emotions you may be feeling during a certain window of time. In nature, it also happens naturally. You have different plants that work symbiotically, they work together really well. So if you have a second to review our companion planting guide, especially if you have a garden, you have a farm, you're interested in any of those items, please check that out. You can also, if you have any questions about the presentation today, you can feel free to reach out to me directly. Again, if you're popping in a little bit late, my email is agworks@ccaeducate.me. You can send inquiries that way. If you want to come in for a tour, if you want to come in for an activity, you're of course more than welcome. We are that support for the community. We try to have as many fun events as we can throughout the year. We also do events virtually, so if you're interested in that, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much again for attending today's session on companion planting and visiting our aquaponic system here at AgWorks at CCA. You have a great rest of your day.